Welcome. We're really glad to see such a big group today and to see that everyone seems to have a seat. As you can see, today's session is being filmed. I believe there might be, is there a free seat over there? So there's a free seat in the corner. Any space over there? So welcome everyone. So my name is Julie Vaillancourt and I'm the liaison officer, communication and liaison officer at the Office of Undergraduate Research, and we are being filmed for those students who couldn't make it today. Some people had scheduling conflicts, due to academic responsibilities and personal emergencies. So we decided to just film today's session, so no pressure, but any question that you ask today is being filmed and recorded. And I'm just going to get my remote. All right. It is a full house, so there's not a single seat left, right? Okay, but it seems like the whole group is here, so we're good. And so today's session is about, we'll talk about UROP program and what to expect. Library resources, so we have a few specialists. Sarah Simkin, Michelle Brown is not up there, but she'll be doing the presentation today, and she's a resource specialist. I'm sorry for those of you who have to stand. When I'm finished talking in about 5 or 10 minutes, I'll go see in a neighboring room if we have any other chairs that we could get for you guys. And we have responsible conduct of research. We have an expert who will be giving you a talk on ethics and integrity. So Office of Undergraduate Research Team, some of you know who we are. We have an interim part-time director. She's half-time until the end of December with us. I'm the full-time communications and liaison officer. So I'm the program administrator for the UROP program. I, respond to your inquiries on email, and I just make sure that the program runs smoothly and that that we keep lines of communication open. Jada Watson is a student and mobility and immigration specialist, and she takes good care of our visiting student researchers who come from all around the world, from bachelor's level, master's level, PhD level. So she removes the immigration obstacles, and she's presently training Dali Brisson, who's also half-time. She's a work-study student. She's being trained on student mobility and immigration matters, and she assists me in my duties. This is how you reach us, is urop@uottawa.ca. Now you will notice perhaps in peak periods it's hard to get a response. It's been extremely busy since October, and we've had different personnel changes, so please bear with us. We're sorry for the delays, and sometimes if you need to send a little reminder that you're waiting on a response, please do so, and we do really appreciate your patience and understanding. A lot of you have accepted your bursary, your UROP bursary, via email, and just if I haven't acknowledged, if I haven't responded, it doesn't mean I don't have it. So if by chance I have a question mark, I'm just about to send the file of all students who've accepted their UROP bursary. So if, for example, I have a question and I'm not quite sure you've accepted yet, I will reach out to you, okay? So our history, we've been around since 2010. We're a relatively new office here at the university. We have had 140 awards that were given out in 2010, and fast forward to, since 2013, we've been giving out 300 to 320 awards per year, and we'd like to keep giving more. So If you like your experience, please do share with your student peers. We'd like to keep getting more budget to give more awards in the future. Now, anybody who's just joined us at the workshop right now, just so you know, we'll be hunting down some chairs shortly in a few moments, maybe in neighboring rooms. So anyways, the objectives of the program, as you may know, is that there's an enriched student experience so that you get research occasions, hands-on experience, and get to develop one-on-one relationships that you might not get otherwise in a 200 to 300 people classroom. Okay, so it's good to take advantage of this mentoring experience and the hands-on experience, which can lead you to master's level projects through these professors and or background experience to gain access to graduate studies or specialized degrees like medicine. But it's also something that helps you explore career options. So some careers require research skills, and it's good to find out early on at the bachelor's level if research is for you. You know, it's not for everybody, and it's by doing it sometimes that you learn about yourself, you learn about your skills and interests. So it's a $1,000 scholarship that will be deposited in each student's account within probably the next 3 weeks, we're hoping. So it's a balance that's applied to your student account. So if you have a positive balance as a result of the UROP grant, in some cases it's possible to ask for a reimbursement check, you know, so that it's an actual check. Otherwise, it'll be applied. If you don't make any such requests, it's applied simply to your student account. As for your professor supervisor, they get their $500 bursary deposited to their general research fund in January. So what's included in UROP is a 50-hour of research experience minimum. So if it could go up to 100 hours, if it gets out of hand, if you see the scope of the project is gradually taking over your life, if it's going to be over 100 hours, it's good to not hesitate to communicate with your supervisor, professor, just, you know, to try to feel out with them like how you could reduce things to 100 hours maximum of a project. We know that you have a course load. You already have a heavy workload, most of you. Some of you have part-time jobs. You have a personal life to attend to. So if for some reason, though, you're not comfortable approaching your professor, or you've approached your professor and you're having communication challenges, please don't hesitate to come to us. Sometimes we can intervene. We know our professor supervisors. Most of them are accessible and are open to having a talk about the scope of the project. Okay, so we are here to assist you. Same thing like for when you're doing research, abstract, poster, and presentation at the symposium. Some of you have never done that. We will be giving you workshops to assist you with these tasks, you know, at the beginning of the year. So that's concrete help, but if you have other, I don't know, other stresses, if you need any help in terms of other resources. We know resources on campus very well, such as learning supports or counseling supports. Sometimes we can provide you with advice as well. In an old life, I was a school counselor, so I'm used to giving advice on, you know, on your academic profile and on your, you know, if you need a bit of guidance, sometimes I can provide that support by having an individual meeting. And, you know, if you want to go over the challenges happening during your project, it's all right to ask for an individual appointment by emailing me. And my email is going to be displayed later on. So this, what's included in UROP also is there's networking, social activities, training. For example, this Friday there's a training on international internships. So you'll find out about research project opportunities abroad. which are really interesting. I'll touch on that a little bit more later on in the session. But yeah, like so the workshops are a great opportunity to find out, like to meet up with other student peers who are doing the UROP program at the same time as you. The symposium, of course, is a great networking opportunity as administrators and other student researchers and some professional researchers will be there as well. The end of your project really is March 8th, unless you have a special agreement with your professor supervisor and you've decided to do a condensed kind of project. But really, most people, the project runs its course until March 8th, and your poster is due on that day as well, okay? So that we can, from March 8th until a few days later, provide you with feedback on your poster so that we can then print it so that it's ready for the symposium. So we do have an education symposium March 22nd, which happens to be the same date as the education symposium Jean-Paul Dion. Is anybody in education here? Okay, so if you're in education, it's just, you have the opportunity to register to a symposium in December. You will get our assistance in terms of, what's a poster, how to make up a poster. And you will be excused, like you're not going to be excused from preparing a poster for us, but you'll be excused from the event itself because you're attending your own specialized symposium in your field. Okay? All right, so to communicate with us, please go via email. If you could give us a day or a few days in some cases, because sometimes people email me on a Sunday night, the day before the Monday morning workshop. Sometimes it's good to give, if you sometimes can give us a little bit of notice. Like we can't always, I got some emails this morning saying I can't make it to the workshop today. Sometimes we can't react as quickly as other departments. We're a small team, so if you do have a day or few to reach out to us in some situations, it helps us communicate effectively with you. So we have a great collaboration with the library. We've got an institutional repository. So your poster will be added to the repository, UO Research, thanks to the library team. It's a permanent link and it makes your results visible. Of course, we'll ask for your permission in March or in April to put your poster in that, repository. Okay, so it's great visibility for your projects. And this is just a picture from 2 years ago. We held the symposium then in the University Center in a great space. It's next to the University Bar, and it's next to the Tim Hortons. It's a nice space. There's a skylight in that space, and it's always a really nice event, very well attended, great networking opportunity. I'm going to now invite our library specialist who will give you a talk on resources that will be invaluable as you're conducting your research projects. While she starts the talk, for those of you who joined us a little bit later and didn't get to have a seat, I'll hunt down a few more seats so that you can comfortably attend, watch the presentation for the rest of the session. So if you'll bear with me in just a little moment, we will have Michelle Brown, one of our specialists from the library.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michelle Brown, and I'm one of the librarians here at the university. I'm the e-learning librarian. So I'm here in place of Patrick Laval, who's our psychology librarian. He couldn't be here. So I'm just here today to give you sort of a brief overview of the services and the resources that we have at the library that can help you with your research and with all of your coursework, actually. So we have a great deal of print resources at the library. We have about 2 million books in print, but we also have a lot of electronic resources. So we have over 1 million electronic books and over 100,000 electronic journals. So depending on your discipline, some people prefer using the print books, but more and more, I think, people are moving towards the e-resources. So the library website is probably the best place for you to start your research. You can find us at biblio.ottawa.ca, and the library website is also one of the common links on every UO website. So any UO website you're on, you can go to the bottom and there should be a link for the library there. So if you get a little bit lost or you forget this link, it's okay. It's easy to find us. So I just wanted to show, we have a screenshot here of the library website because I'm not going to be able to actually give you a live demo. But I just wanted to show you some of the main points of the website. So at the very top, there's a gray bar with different toggle downs. One of them says research help. So that's a great place to go to the research guides. The research guides are your starting point for research in the various disciplines. So you can go there and find what are the databases, the journals that are recommended for your discipline, if there's any special tools for your discipline. So I used to be the librarian in education, so that research guide highlights curriculum guides and manipulative kits and all the things that are special for education. Engineering has patent guides, all sorts of things that are special. That's also where you can contact your subject librarian. So there'll be a picture of your librarian, the contact information, you can send them an email, you can book appointments with them online. So please feel free to reach out to them. They're waiting for your questions. They're very happy to meet with you and help you. We also have a link further down in the page for Racer. It's under services. So Racer is our interlibrary loan system. We have quite a lot of resources here, as I mentioned before, but sometimes you'll find a citation for an article or a certain book that you're looking for, and we don't have it here. So if you sign up for Racer, you can request that that item be sent from another library. We have reciprocal agreements with all the universities in Canada and quite a few in the US and Europe. So if you make a request, we'll ask Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver, another big library, wherever that item is, if they could send it here. So this process takes a couple of days. It's not good if you need the item the next day. I'd say it usually takes about 3 to 5 days, depending on how far it's coming. But it's a free service, and it's free for you to take advantage of, so I would recommend it. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention was we have a guide also for citation management. So that's something we get questions a lot about. And depending on your discipline, there's certain citation management software that's more popular. So I think in sciences and engineering, they use Mendeley a lot. Humanities and arts, they use Zotero a lot. And in medicine and health sciences, they use EndNote. So those are the 3 different softwares that we do a lot of training on and we're specialists in. So if you have any questions about that, please contact us. So as I said before, we have subject librarians in all the different faculties and departments. So please feel free to reach out to your subject librarian. They can definitely help you. So this is an example of a research guide that was made by Sarah. So you can see her picture in the corner there. And she has a little button that says email me and book an appointment with me. So it's really easy to reach her. But this is the guide that she made for computer science. So she gives you suggestions on the best databases, patents and standards, and different workshops that she offers on on that subject area. We also have different items that you can take out from the library. So we lend out laptops, iPads, we have video games, board games, we have some virtual reality equipment. So those are things you might want to look into for your research or just for fun. We have 12 libraries that are spread out across the 3 campuses. So most of the libraries are here on the main campus. So the first map shows the main campus. We have the management libraries in Desmarais, and Morisset is the main arts and humanities and science library. So that's the big building just over there. Fauteux is our law library, and FSS is social sciences and social sciences. And Lamoureux is the Faculty of Education. So that's on the main campus. And at the Health Sciences campus in Roger Guindon, that's our Health Sciences library. So you might search in the catalog and find that the item is at a different campus. So just make sure that you can check the location of it before you go to pick it up, because it could be in different places. So that's all I have for my presentation. Are there any questions? No? Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for this great presentation. And I was wondering, on a completely unrelated topic, who has the attendance sheet? If you could just keep it circulating to whoever hasn't gotten to it before by now. So thanks again for sharing all this great information, and please feel free to use these great tools that were spoken about. Has our mentor made it yet? Nope, she's not here yet. Okay. So shortly we'll have our specialist who will be going over ethics and integrity of research. Meantime, I'm just going to put my PowerPoint back up, if you'll bear with me just a few seconds. Any questions for me so far? Yes.
What happens in the event that we have that you have mandatory academic requirements, such as like a lab or a midterm on the day of the symposium?
Your professors are aware that this is an academic requirement as well. So, if you have an individual situation, I'd advise you to just email me, and we'll use, of course, our judgment, if we'll see what it is. But your professors, supervisors should know, and if there's an issue, let's say there's something to be negotiated with the faculty, it's quite possible we'll step in and intervene with the faculty. So just feel free to reach out to us with your specific situations. We've had a case before. I mean, the person had to be on a research abroad internship. Of course, we didn't make them turn down a great opportunity, because we do the academic experience and your opportunities are valued. So we can understand in some cases that it's unavoidable. So for the symposium, I think I covered a lot of things. So it's an important event. There will be VIPs, very important people from the university administration, some faculty members, some researchers. There'll be a poster competition. We'll come up with the 3 best posters, and we'll post the winners on the website. There will be, at minimum, the poster printing takes place a few weeks before the symposium. So we take a few short days to give you feedback. Then we send off all the posters for printing. We do share the cost. Your part of the cost is probably, traditionally to date, it's been around $40 on your part. So it's a shared cost, and we get it printed at the DocuCenter. We all often divide up the poster sessions by broad research themes, or based on the and also based on the faculty of your supervisor. So the support you get from us, you get your supervisor, of course, mentors you and should be meeting you on a regular basis. They might get you to meet with a research team or get you to have support by a research assistant, but they should be meeting you as well several times during the semester. You have mentors also. One of them, Sheridan, will be making her way here by the end of the session and will give you a few words on her role and how she can support you. You can pick her brain a little bit if you'd like to know what her experience was like at the symposium or writing the abstract. That'll be possible to do it then. Like, she'll be here a few moments to address you. We have mentors for social sciences, humanities, and Telfer. One mentor for health sciences and medicine, and one mentor for science and engineering. We also have our team there to support you, like I mentioned earlier. So by the end of you should keep in mind that by the end of the year, we might send around a survey just to figure out how we can keep improving your experience with this program. So we value your feedback, so comments and suggestions are welcome. You can also get involved. Let's say you have a positive experience. Let's say you like your research experience within the UROP program and you'd like to, share the wealth a little bit, share your experience. We do look for volunteers on an ongoing basis because it's nice to get sometimes on the part of a person who's completed a program to share your experience with new participants. So it's very enriching information to share. So if you would like to be either a paid mentor next year or a volunteer, you could either do testimonials during some of our workshops, but we've also had volunteers and mentors be ambassadors at Open Doors events. So we had an Open Doors event at the beginning of this year. We had potential students thinking of attending University of Ottawa. So I was there and I had a few mentors and volunteers who were able to share on the program with new potential students. So yeah, if you have photos, you can share them with us by all means. And in terms of your successes, you have a few opportunities to share. I mean, there is that contest, the poster competition at the end of the year. Sometimes I'll get some newsletter articles or call for proposals from other programs, from other institutions, from other organizations. So on occasion, I'll share that via email so that you can look at things. There was a Connecting Young Minds Science Conference organized by Ottawa students this year. So these are the types of opportunities I sometimes share, just in case it's of interest to you. So there's several research opportunities on Ottawa campus, even beyond UROP. When you've survived or completed UROP, it can lead you to research assistantships with professors if you've impressed them, or with other professors. There's summer programs like NSERC USRA for science and engineering. The information session is January 19th. That's a 16-week research project during the summer on campus with one of our professors who's an NSERC grant holder. And so it's a grant of minimum of $5,625 for a summer research experience. So it's a prestigious grant to hold. It is a competitive process, but it's worth looking into, and it is on our website. Other research opportunities beyond Europe. When you're done with Europe, there are, volunteering opportunities through the Centre Michael Jean for global engagement, global and community engagement. So there are opportunities there, and some of your faculties have courses, research courses built into their programs. International research abroad programs exist as well. I'm about to talk about that. I'm giving a workshop this Friday if you're interested. So there's an English session from 10 to 11:30 in this room on international research abroad opportunities. And a French session from 11:30 to 1. And so this is going to be on programs like CLIC. CLIC is almost fully funded program. It's in China with a host institution that's a partner of ours. And the Ministry of Education over there provides on-campus housing, the tuition, like they waive the tuition, they waive the admission fees, they pay for part of the insurance. We at U Ottawa provide $2,000 travel and mobility grant as well as full credit. So that's one of the programs. We have Ontario, Rhone, Alp, OBW, OJS. These are other programs that take place in France and other countries. Deadline is in January, and we have CIRI. We just had a workshop on that recently. The deadline for that is December 1st. It takes place, most of those programs take place during the summer. So that's an additional research experience you could get access to. Okay, so you could go to our website if these things are of interest to you. Oops. Okay, so now that I've covered most of the opportunities you should be aware of, I would like to introduce one of our experts who is going to be talking about ethics, which is a very important topic to get, to gain knowledge about as you're about to start research projects. Her name is Catherine Paquet. She's Director of Office of Research Ethics and Integrity. We're very happy to welcome her today. So, Catherine, I can set up your PowerPoint if you'd like, and you have the floor.
Okay. Good afternoon. My sixth and final presentation for you guys. Tape this time. Welcome. So I'm going to talk to you about what you need to know about ethics and integrity in research. So this is essentially a presentation about the basics of what you need to know as you begin your career in research in a university setting. I'll start with an overview of the regulations and what applies to you and to everybody who's in a university setting. I'll talk a little bit about the responsible conduct of research, what it is not, and a description of the processes in place at the university, and then very briefly go over some basic information for research, people doing research with humans. So to start, a little bit of a frame. As an institution that receives funding, federal funding from the three major granting agencies in Canada, we have certain responsibilities, and we have to sign on to this agreement that's called the Agreement on the Administration of Agency Grants and Awards. This agreement has various parts to it, and I'll touch upon some of that. But essentially, it lays out the obligations of the institution and of its researchers if they want to receive money from the federal granting agencies. If a university or a researcher is in breach, the university or the researcher may not get any more funding. So some of the obligations for the institution is to provide resources for its researchers, so physical and organizational infrastructure for research, have policies in place that support those of the agencies, and also make sure in many other ways that everybody complies with legislated requirements, policies and procedures, and other requirements. Okay. So for responsible conduct of research, one of the policies that we have in place at the university since 2015 is our CR Policy 115. And this really lays out what the researcher's responsibilities are, what is responsible conduct of research, who's responsible for laying out the revising the policy and all that. So it highlight essentially is that research is important for the university and that we will support our researchers in conducting research ethically. In terms of the tri-agency policies, all of these apply to the institution, and I'll list a few other ones that might apply to certain types of research. So the agreement is at the center because it really is the central document, and it mentions all of these, right? So responsible conduct of research is the tri-agency framework. For research involving humans, there's the Tri-Council policy statement, which I'll talk about a bit later. Research involving animals, there's CCAC standards, and financial administration is the Tri-Agency Financial Administration Guide. So an example of financial responsibilities that the university has, which touches a couple of these, is that if somebody's doing research with human beings, they have to get an ethics approval, and without it, they can't get their funds released if it's funded by the Tri-Councils. Other requirements that could apply depending on this type of research that you might be doing now or in the future. There's animal care policies related to Canadian Environmental Assessment Act, biosafety guidelines. If anybody's working with blood, human material, they have to get a biosafety certificate for their lab. Controlled Goods Program, Nuclear Safety Commission regulations, and Canada Food and Drug Acts. So you have the links. If this applies to you, you can have a look at it. I did want to highlight the research responsibilities when it comes to responsible conduct of research. So one of them is to follow the best research practices honestly, accountably, openly, and fairly. To follow institutional policies and professional disciplinary standards. The standards vary according to the disciplines. And to comply with applicable laws and regulations. What does that mean? You have to know the rules and you have to follow them. And it's your responsibility. What does RCR, Responsible Conduct of Research, apply to? It's important to really consider it research as a wheel, okay? So it's not just when you're actually collecting the research, but from the moment you start thinking about an idea that you want to do research, to the point where you might ask for funding. So we'll talk a little bit about plagiarism later on. Plagiarism is not okay. It's not okay when you're publishing, and it's not okay when you're asking for money either. Data collection, use of the data retention, so how are you going to be storing the data, where, for how long, all that. And the data sharing. So that could be a publication, it could be a presentation, it could be a poster. Okay. So all of that, honesty, integrity really is central to all of the research activities. Why is responsible conduct of research important? Well, there can be some effects, and I'm going to give you some cases later on of people who did not do the right thing and what impact that had. So without it, there can be harms to participants if you're dealing with humans, research community, research itself. I don't know if you've had the presentation from the library, but you're going to be looking at articles and books that have been published. If that information is incorrect, it means that you will be basing your own research on research that's incorrect. So that's a problem. And if it keeps going on for many years, and there's more and more researchers that are using research that's incorrect, it's a really big problem. Okay. Risk of losing the confidence of the lay and professional communities if somebody's found guilty of a breach of responsible conduct. Researchers' responsibilities to use public funds. So if it's funded, you have a responsibility to use those funds appropriately. You can't go out and buy a TV with research funds. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about what to do and what not to do. What to do in research, you have to have a high level of rigor, so you have to be careful in conducting research. When you propose the research, when you perform it, when you're analyzing your results, and when you're providing those results to other people. Right? Fabrication is what you're not supposed to do. So that is the invention of data, either partially or wholly. So, making believe that you're doing a survey and you actually fill it out entirely by yourself and see that 15 people filled it out, for example. Okay, that would be an example of fabrication. Falsification means that you've got data, but you don't include all of it in your report. And you do that because you want to hide some findings. So it's manipulating, changing, or omitting data. And the important thing is to say that it's purposeful, and you don't mention that you're omitting data. There's some cases in which you might conduct an experiment and you realize that something went wrong, you've got erroneous data, and you would exclude it. And that's fine as long as you mention it. If you don't mention it, it's not okay. You have to keep complete and accurate records of your data. That's good for replication purposes, and also if ever somebody's accused of manipulating data or doing something else wrong, it's really hard to prove that you didn't do anything wrong if you don't have your data, right, your raw data. What not to do, the destruction of research records, either your own or somebody else's, with a goal to avoid the detection of wrongdoing or in contravention of laws, regulations, and professional disciplinary standards. For example, biomedical research has to be kept for 25 years. You don't have a choice, it's law. It has to be kept for that long. An example of somebody destroying, well, I'll give you, an example of somebody destroying data that luckily did not happen at the University of Ottawa. There was a student in science who was working in a lab. She had her samples with her, tried to run an experiment. It wasn't working. She couldn't really figure out why, so she tried it a couple of times and eventually still couldn't figure out why. So they looked at the cameras in the lab, and what they discovered was that there was another student who was actually going into the fridge and sabotaging her research. So if you want a course on how to get kicked out of an institution, that would be step one, right? Step one and probably the final step. So again, destruction of research records is not a good idea. You have to reference and, where applicable, obtain permission to use other people's data or other people's work. What not to do is plagiarism, which most of you probably would be familiar with, right? You're supposed to cite people if you're going to be using their work or somebody else's work, including theories, concepts, data, source material, methodologies, or findings. So if you don't reference appropriately, that's plagiarism. And redundant publications, where you might be a little bit less familiar with, is, let's say I publish a paper, and later on I want to use part of that paper in another paper. I have to reference myself. So you also can't double your own work, right? And if you publish something in one language and it gets published in something else, that is one publication, not two publications. So some people, there was a case where somebody published their PhD, they self-published their PhD thesis and claimed that was a second publication. That is not okay. They wanted to have an extra publication on their CV. A PhD thesis is one publication. You can't, you know, even if it appears in a different paper, it's still one. So what to do, including as authors, the people who contributed to the work, and only those people. They have to contribute to the work and have to share responsibility for it as well. So automatically, if you're named as a co-author, you share responsibility for part of the work that's being published. Acknowledging, in addition to authors, all contributors and contributions to research. So for example, people who've helped with the writing, funders, etc. What not to do, invalid authorship, is when you don't mention somebody, when you inaccurately attribute authorship to somebody who did not contribute. So you're writing a paper, you put somebody's name on it, they actually didn't contribute or didn't contribute significantly to the paper. Can anybody think of why somebody would do that, put somebody's name on a paper when they actually didn't do any work? I usually have a couple of people who get it right. Yeah, so exactly. Somebody wants to get their name on a paper. In some cases also, they put somebody's name who's got a very good reputation because they think they'll have a higher chance of getting published. In some cases, somebody will say, oh, put me on your publication, I'll put you on mine. And we kind of do a quid pro quo on that one. That is not okay. There's a case with a husband and wife who used to do that, right? They were putting each other on each other's publication, not in the same field. So if it was found out, because it was a little bit odd, that they would actually be contributing to the same type of work. Inadequate acknowledgement is the opposite. So you don't put somebody on a paper who actually did contribute. And finally, managing conflict of interest. So whether it's real, perceived, or factual conflict of interest. Here, the important thing to notice, and I'll talk about conflict of interest here, so is that it's not managed. The issue is that it's not managed. So if there is a conflict of interest, let's say you have shares in a company and you're developing something that could either benefit or not benefit that company, you're in a position of at least perceived conflict of interest because you have two competing interests, right? So you have to disclose that if there's a conflict of interest to the institution, and then the institution can see if it can be either managed or removed. Or maybe you just can't do the work with in that specific case. So this is the wheel of what not to do. The top 3 in the US, it's called misconduct. In Canada, we talk about a breach, and it's much wider. So us, it includes everything in here, and in the US, it's just the top 3. So some examples. I'm going to start with retraction, the winners. So retractions are when a paper is removed from publication for various things. It can be an honest error in some cases. Somebody just made a mistake and they retracted it. And in some cases, it can be this. So Yoshitaka Fuji, an anesthesiologist, has 183 retractions, okay, mostly for fabrication and falsification. Just having that many papers is already quite impressive. Having that many retractions is especially so. So this is the top 5 that you do not want to be on, right? Joachim Bolt, another anesthesiologist, has 96. Again, he didn't obtain ethics approval for certain of his studies, and he also falsified data or fabricated data. Diederik Stoppel, a social psychologist, has 58, mostly for fabrication. He made stuff up. Adrian Maxim, an engineer, has 48 for falsification of data. And Peter Chen, he has 43. And what this guy was doing, which is really interesting, is if you're going to be publishing a paper, you need to have it peer reviewed. So what would he do? He invented peer reviewers, which were him. So he gave himself aliases, said that he was a peer reviewer, and then reviewed his own work. And there was a little group of people who were doing that, which he headed. He also had a citation ring, which is essentially people citing other people's papers just to kind of bump up the reputation of the article. Okay. All people who are now kind of infamous for the very bad reasons. If you're fascinated by retractions, there's a whole website dedicated to this called Retraction Watch. The issue retractions and kind of the circumstances around it, it's quite interesting reading and very good ideas of what not to do in research. Right? So case 1 that I'm going to present in a little bit more detail is Watson, Crick, and Wilkins. Does anybody know who these people are? Yes. Exactly. So they helped discover the structure of DNA. So the case, and they got the Nobel Prize for it in 1962. What's kind of fairly well known now is that they secretly obtained X-ray diffraction data from Rosalind Franklin, who was a scientist who was working in this field, without her permission. They used it, they got credit for it, and she did not. So the issues are plagiarism and inadequate acknowledgement. And the consequences really are for her. So they got the Nobel Prize. They still have the Nobel Prize. She does not, because she died in 1953 due to cancer, which was probably highly likely due to the type of work that she was doing. And you cannot get a Nobel Prize posthumously. So you have to be alive when you are nominated for a Nobel Prize. Some people have been deceased after they've been nominated and they still got it posthumously, but you have to be alive when you're nominated for a Nobel Prize. So forever will not be recognized as a Nobel Prize winner for this discovery in which she participated in. Andrew Wakefield. If I say autism, does that ring a bell? Yeah, nodding, yes. Okay, so he's the lovely British scientist. Really special guy who's still doing the rounds, especially in the southern US. People still believe this. So he was doing research on autism. He published a paper which really had 12 participants to begin with. That's not like super strong. The media kind of took it over and said, oh, there's a link between autism and vaccines. What he did not disclose is that he actually had shares in a company that was developing a vaccine that would have been a competitor to the MMR, which is the vaccine that most people get across the world. And and also he did not reveal that almost 12 of the participants in the study already had developmental issues. So not only was it not strong, but it was biased. So mismanagement of conflict of interest and falsification of data. He also manipulated the data in a way that would show that it was getting the results that he wanted. He also had a really interesting way of recruiting participants, including at his own kids' birthday parties. Really ethical guy. So the consequences. He was barred from practicing medicine in the UK. His study was retracted. But the more serious consequence for this is less people are getting vaccinated. So a lot less kids are getting vaccinated, and therefore cases of measles have risen in the US, in the UK, in some places in Canada. We've been a little bit less affected here, but there's still cases that have come up for something that was essentially pretty much eradicated before this article came out. Right? And also, the second effect that has a major impact is that a lot of people then had to disprove this. So no one else had ever even proven this, and a lot of scientists then had to do work to kind of prove that this was not accurate. So we spent a lot of time doing this instead of probably researching the actual cause for autism. So this is one where there's major consequences across the board. Abida Sophie Jamal. She is a Canadian scientist at the Women's College Hospital at U of T. And this came out where it was actually at an REB conference when this came out with somebody who works at U of T, so it was like, an article in Nature on using nitroglycerin to treat osteoporosis. She was saying that that women who put nitroglycerin on their skin, it actually helped to treat osteoporosis. She had almost 250 participants in the study, followed them for 2 years. The problem is, you know that wheel I had earlier? Well, she checked off almost all the boxes, right? So, falsification. She intentionally manipulated data. She sent data to her co-researchers, which had already been manipulated, but told them that it was raw data that had not been manipulated. So they had no idea that the data had been falsified. They thought it was real data. She blamed a research assistant for manipulating the data falsely. Data retention, she deleted records. She got in the way of the investigation into this case, and she failed to appropriately retain research data. So she has the honor now of being the only Canadian who's ever had her name posted, his or her name posted as somebody who's breached the responsible conduct of research policy. I think it's well-deserved, we have to agree. She resigned from Women's College Hospital as the investigation was ongoing. Her article was retracted. She had to repay grant money. I think it was close to about $1 million that she had to repay in grant money. And she's also permanently banned from receiving, applying for, reviewing anything having to do with any of the 3 major granting councils in Canada. So that is the end for her research career in Canada at the very least. Next case, so Green and Lacour. This study was interesting, and this also made media back in 2015. So in the US, you can vote on laws, right? In California, there was a law that was going to be passed about gay marriage. And what this guy was proposing, he was a PhD student. So when Contact Changes Minds, an experiment on transmission of support for gay equality. He was saying that he hired a company to do door-to-door to kind of get polls of people's opinions on gay marriage. And that depending on if the person who was at the door was gay or straight, that would influence the person's vote. So he did kind of a pre and post and tried to demonstrate with apparently almost 1,000 participants, like 972, that you would have a higher chance of supporting same-sex marriage if you were in contact, even briefly, with somebody who was either gay or lesbian. Right? Few problems with this study. So of course this hit the media. It was like, oh yeah, if you come into contact, it's going to be, great. Unfortunately, quite a few issues here. Somebody read the paper, noticed that there were some things that quite didn't add up, and they started doing some digging. And what they found out was that, first off, that company who supposedly did the door-to-door work for him that he'd hired had never heard of him. He also cited that he'd received funding from a few different places, and they had never given the funding to him either. So he lied about the funding, he lied about the company. So quite a few things are false. Here, falsification, fabrication. It's unclear if any door-to-door work was ever done, but definitely not this number and not by that company. So the article was retracted on June 5th, 2015. And the Monsieur Lacour, who just finished his PhD and got a lovely offer from Princeton to be a professor there, that offer quickly got rescinded as soon as they found out that he had falsified the study. Yeah, it's bad when your PhD thesis is completely falsified. It's really surprising what people will do. I had a past student here contact me because somebody in the US had actually copied her entire thesis and submitted as her own. So she found this out, she didn't know what to do. She's like, not only did they take out all the references that she had put in, so they didn't reference her, and they took out all her references on top of it. So they just kind of did a copy-paste, but without any citations at all. Yeah. Again, fascinating what people will try to do. And also now it's like easier to cheat, but also easier to be found out. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. If you should ever suspect misconduct has taken place, I am the Research Integrity Officer for the university, so you can come and contact me. But the first steps is make sure your understanding of the event is accurate. Obviously, we've seen it. Somebody who's accused of misconduct, even if it's not proven to be true, it can have major consequences for them. So you have to make sure the facts are correct. Consult others to see if they agree. Don't make any accusations without proof. Very important as well. As much as somebody can't defend themselves, it's very hard to defend yourself if you don't have like a factual basis for what you're being accused of. Know the university and your field's rules, and if you can, get somebody with experience to back you up. So if you've done all that and you find that really there is a problem, try to get somebody who's got experience and a little bit more status to back you up. Report to someone who isn't or shouldn't be in a conflict of interest. And the university does not investigate anonymous allegations. So, but we do treat it confidentially, however. So somebody can come and see me in a confidential manner, and it can be treated, you know, without revealing that person's name. Mind you, it's very hard, because usually if somebody has enough information to make an accusation of misconduct, there's usually, I mean, unless it's something that's published, but if it's within a lab setting, there's sometimes very few people who have enough information to be able to make that accusation, right? If ever you are accused of misconduct, it actually happened to one of our students. Somebody contacted me to say that the student had falsified data in a publication. It wasn't a publication like a journal, but it was a publication that had been put out and created for a resource center. And an error had been made. So the student had combined data for men and women in a couple of places in the paper or in the report. It was a mistake, so when I contacted the student and told the student about the issue, she immediately corrected it. And that's what you're supposed to do, right? If you notice that you've made a mistake, you have to correct it. So stay calm, talk to a colleague, your supervisor, student association, student appeal center, ombudsperson, or me. Verify your data and records. If you've made a mistake, correct it as soon as possible. That's something else that Jamal, our Canadian researcher, did not do, so she didn't even attempt to correct the errors that were made. And carefully read the relevant regulation and follow the steps. These are the potential consequences. Essentially goes from, you know, it can be getting a 0, having to redo a paper, or being kicked out if it's something really serious. Some contacts. And that's it for RCR. Any questions on that aspect of things? Yep.
When you talked about citing yourself, does that count for even, like, say you just handed a paper in a class?
Usually it's published, but an example of that is if somebody does a master's degree and they have, like, you know, the product of their master's degree, they can't use that for their PhD, right? So if they used even a portion of that, they would have to actually reference their master's thesis.
Okay, but it doesn't count for everything unpublished?
Usually not.
Okay.
But you, again, shouldn't reuse the same work,
Yeah.
like over and over
Of
again,
course,
right?
if
Yeah.
you had an idea from a paper or something like that.
Yeah. So research with humans. A little bit of information on the Tri-Council policy statement. This is pretty much the Bible of the REBs, so it's what every institution that gets funded by the Tri-Councils has to abide by. There's a lot of people in Canada who also abide by it just because there's no other regulation in Canada that's as detailed. So it has 13 chapters. It provides information on everything from how to get informed consent, when should informed consent be obtained, exceptions to that. It's very complete. We highly recommend that any researcher who does research with humans complete the TCPS tutorial, which is online, and I have a link to that at the end of the presentation. I mentioned earlier that all research projects with humans have to go through an REB. So what is an REB? It's Research Ethics Board is a group of people who review research projects involving humans. And the TCPS asks for a minimum of 5 members, okay? So you have to have at minimum 2 people who have expertise in research. We have more than that. We have 2 committees, and we'll talk about that, but we have more than that. But usually the experts for us are professors. You also have to have at least 1 person who's a community person with no affiliation to the institution. So essentially somebody who's completely from outside the institution. You have to have somebody with ethics expertise. It's not mandatory, but we do have 2 graduate students per REB, either MA, doc, or postdoc. And we have 1 legal expert per REB as well. The REBs are mandated by Senate and under the responsibility of the Vice President of Research. So how many REBs do we have at the university? We have 2, and it's essentially split by discipline, pretty much. So for arts, education, management, social sciences, and law, it's the social sciences and humanities REB. And for engineering, science, health sciences, and psychology, so we kind of split that one apart from the rest of the social sciences. And non-clinical projects from the Faculty of Medicine, we have a health and health sciences REB. There's also REBs at each of the affiliated hospitals. So the university is affiliated with 5 of the local hospitals. The Ottawa Hospital and Heart Institute has its own REB. There's also one at CHIO, the Royal, Bruyère, and Montfort. And we have agreements with those that if there's researchers that are involved in both sites, that we kind of accept each other's REB approvals. So what needs to go through an REB? 2 major components. One, it has to be research, obviously, for Research Ethics Board. And the second one, it has to deal with humans. So it's research with humans. And humans in this case, it's not just if you're doing interviews like one-on-one interviews. It can be online surveys. It can be doing anything like if you're analyzing somebody's hair, if you're analyzing somebody's blood. So biological materials count as well. Even cells count, like if you're using human cells, that also is something that has to go through an REB. There's different types of processes that are in place depending on the type, essentially the level of risk of research. So if something's full board review means that the whole board meets and discusses a project. So they meet in person to go over a project. It's the default procedure, so anything below that can always be bumped up to a full board review. If something's minimal risk, and the definition in the TCPS is kind of, anyway, risk must not be higher than those lived in everyday life. Okay, so what does that mean? It has to mean that you have to look not only as the topic of the research, but also who's going to be the participant. An example of that is if you're doing research on a sensitive topic, for example, suicide. Okay? If you're doing a research with people who are maybe at risk of committing suicide or who've made an attempt at committing suicide, you're going to be probably reviewed as a full board review. If you're working with psychologists or social workers, it's probably something that would be of minimal risk review because they're used to dealing with these situations, they're professionals, right? So the risk would not be as high as for somebody who may be at risk and who might have a higher risk due to their participation in the research. Delegated expedited review is for stuff that's either already been reviewed at another site, most secondary use of data, so that that's already been collected and that you're going to be analyzing would fall under an expedited review. And modifications, so we get a lot of those, like about 30 a month. So somebody does a research project, they realize that their recruitment method's not working, they want to change it, that would be a modification to an improved project. Annual reports, all ethics approvals are only valid for 1 year. And that's not our decision, it's the Tri-Council's decision. You can't get it longer than that, so people have to submit annual reports in order to get a renewal. We're here to help. I have a very good team that deals with the REB stuff. So the coordinator can ask your questions regarding process and many other things. Our protocol officers can also help. They meet with over 100 people a year to kind of go over their applications, and often when they do, these applications get through the REB process much quicker. So if ever you're doing research and you have a special topic or you're in a hurry, it's a very good idea to meet with one of the protocol officers before submitting your project. We also offer workshops, usually in research methods classes or stuff like this, on REB processes and how to fill out the form. Contact us if you have questions. Any questions about the REB stuff? Good? Okay. That's the information. So the rest of this is just regulations and references. And you will get a copy of this presentation, and it's going to be taped. So if you want to see it, yeah. If ever this interests you and you want to look a little bit more deeper into responsible conduct of research, the ORI, this is the US-based equivalent to us, has this video-based interactive tool, which is very cool. It shows a little video of a situation, asks you to put yourself in the position either of the student or a supervisor or a dean, and really leads you through. So it says, in this situation, would you do A, B, C, D? And the video continues according to how you make your decisions. And then you get to see what happens. It's very cool. Yep. And that's it.
So has anybody not written their name on the attendance sheet yet? Oh, a few. Okay. So if we could keep, if somebody could just pass it, yes, just pass it around, that would be great. You can entrust it with a student. So Tanya, just give it to maybe to a student who will pass it down to the area. Thank you very much. So we have a few more moments. We have two mentors who are here to talk a little bit on their role as a mentor, how they'll be of assistance. They'll tell you also there'll be a mandatory session at one point with you, just 15 minutes to give you valuable information. So this is a good time to pick their brain if you want to know their experience with the abstract or the symposium or the poster or anything like that. It'll be great timing for you to ask any questions. So today we have Tanya and Sheridan with us to talk about their role as mentors. Ladies, and no pressure, but you're being filmed. So please share the microphone.
Hello. Hello, everyone. So as Julie just said, I'm Sheridan.
And I'm Tanya.
So we're two of the three mentors that are available to you guys to use as resources for your UROP project. I am the mentor for the Faculty of Medicine and the Faculty of Health Sciences.
And if you're doing your project in science or engineering, I'm your mentor. And then the third mentor works in humanities and social science.
So a little bit about our role. We're pretty much here to provide you with assistance in any area of research. So that can be helping you search databases and draft a thesis and review the literature. But it can also be for more personal concerns. Like if you had problems with your prof, or you don't know how to start your research, or you're having a hard time figuring out what software to use, things like that.
So we've all been where you are today. All three of us did our UROP last year, so we know how you feel. You know, when it comes time to write the abstract and you're like, we're here to help.
So we can help with those things. Our emails are UROPMEN1 at uottawa.ca, UROPMEN2, and UROPMEN3, all at uottawa.ca. So you can send us an email. As Julie said, there will be a 15-minute mandatory meeting that you'll have with one of us. We will be contacting you shortly. That's just to kind of help you get a little bit of guidance for starting your project, to see how it's going, just to touch base with you guys, but you're welcome to book as many appointments with us as you need throughout the year. Anything else to say? Yeah. Enjoy your projects and have fun with it.
And pick their brains now if you have anything else. Any other questions? Yes,
So
go ahead.
Whose email is yours? I just don't want to send emails.
Yeah, so UROPMEN1 is Arts and Humanities. UROPMEN2 is
Me, science and engineering.
and then UROPMEN3 is Medicine and Health Sciences.
But just to be sure, you can also go on the Office of Undergraduate Research Facebook page, and we all posted little bios about ourselves. Are our emails on there?
I think
If-
so.
So you can always email UROP or send a message on the Facebook group, and then
Yes, and then I'll find them.
So like I think Julie was mentioning that like we send in like a poster or like mark sheet or whatever, and then we get feedback. So does that feedback mean like we change stuff and then resend it to do it, or is it just feedback as in like this sucks, good luck, or like
I mean,
it
usually the
depends.
feedback is like you're good.
It's never you suck or it sucks. We'll give you the little, the few minor details or big elements to change. We'll give you what you need to make the adjustments. You'll get a chance to readjust, So you might resend once or twice, tops. So, very simple process.
Is there any other
questions? Yeah.
So like when you present this in person, so like is it you just like repeat your whole speech over and over again to like different rounds of people, or is it like so it's like you just keep going like over the course?
Yeah. Yeah, so throughout the course of the day, it depends how many people come to you to want to know about your research, but it could be a dozen of times that you're doing it. It'll probably get easier as you go and you'll get more comfortable with it. Yeah. All right.
We have a question here. In terms of like the amount of, data and the amount of your project you have done by the time you have your abstract done versus obviously a poster, could you just like give any insight to that?
One of the things I learned during my UROP project is that the project doesn't always go how you expect it to go. So personally, my project didn't really work, and that's okay. I didn't have I had a lot of negative data, and then I ended up making my poster based on that. And there's no penalty as long as you put in the hours, even if it didn't work and you don't have like very much usable data, that's still okay.
Another way to think of your abstract is that it's a really short summary of your findings. So if you have everything kind of done or planned out at least beforehand, it'll be really easy to do your abstract. If you, at that point, haven't done much research, it's going to be really hard to pick what are the most important points that I want to talk about in my abstract. So I definitely recommend having a fairly good grip of your project, the methodology, and everything like that before you write the abstract.
And there's a scholarship, a very interesting scholarship opportunity she'll touch on briefly before you get going. It's worth listening to.
So I'm also one of the co-editors-in-chief of OSearch, the University of Ottawa Science Undergraduate Research Journal. We publish articles relating to the fields of science and engineering, and they're more formal style publications, like original research articles, reviews, opinion articles. So some you need original research for, some you don't. So all of you could write for us and publish with us if you were interested. And with the Office of Undergraduate Research, this year we're offering a $300 scholarship for an outstanding article that's submitted to us before March 2nd, which, I mean, is pretty nice. So I really, really encourage you guys to get involved. Maybe you could use your UROP data to write an article about it, or just write about something you're interested in science or engineering. If you have any questions for me, or if you'd like to find out how to contact us, I have some business cards, so you could come talk to me after this presentation and I can give you some more details about that. Are there any questions about the journal? Okay.
Thank you so much once again for your time. Really appreciated. So feel free to reach out to our mentors. If one of you has a minute or two to help me with carrying chairs, that would be appreciated. But thanks so much for coming. Congratulations on receiving the UROP Award. And have a great semester of research, everybody. Have a great day.